The morning started like any other for Tom Wilson. He woke up at 5, had his usual black coffee, and watched the sun rise over his cornfields. Tom's weathered hands gripped the mug as he sat on his porch, a ritual he had kept for the 30 years he had owned this land. His grandfather had bought this farm back in the 1930s, and Tom had grown up hearing stories about the soil, the weather, and what it meant to be tied to the land. Going to be a hot one today, he muttered to himself, noticing how the birds were quieter than usual. His dog Rex, a brown mutt with loyal eyes, lay at his feet, seemingly unbothered by the unusual stillness of the morning. Tom had just finished his coffee when he felt it. At first it was a slight trembling, like a heavy truck passing by on the distant highway, but within seconds the trembling grew into a violent shaking. The porch swing swayed wildly, and the coffee mug fell from the small table, shattering on the wooden boards. What in the world? Tom grabbed the porch railing as the ground beneath him rolled like ocean waves. Rex started barking frantically, running in circles around Tom's legs. The earthquake lasted less than a minute, but to Tom it felt like an eternity. Living in Nebraska, earthquakes weren't common. In fact, in all his 62 years, Tom had never experienced anything like this. When the shaking finally stopped, Tom took a deep breath and patted Rex's head to calm him down. "It's okay, boy. It's over now." But was it? Tom stepped off the porch, his eyes scanning the horizon. His farmhouse seemed intact, though he noticed a few shingles had fallen from the roof. The old barn stood firm, but the weather vane on top now pointed in a different direction. "Better check the fields," Tom said to Rex, who had calmed down enough to follow at his heels. Tom's farm stretched over 200 acres, most of it covered in corn that was nearly ready for harvest. It was his livelihood, and any damage from the earthquake could mean a tough year ahead. He walked through the rows of corn, checking for fallen stalks or damaged irrigation lines. Everything seemed mostly in order until he reached the western edge of his property, where his land bordered an unused stretch of woodland. "Well, would you look at that?" Tom whispered, coming to a sudden stop. A massive crack had opened in the earth about 20 feet long and 5 feet wide. It wasn't just a simple split in the ground. The earthquake had revealed something that made Tom's heart race. Within the crack was what appeared to be a stone archway, clearly man-made, leading into darkness. Tom approached cautiously, Rex whining behind him as if warning his master to stay away. The archway was made of fitted stones, each one perfectly placed against the next without mortar. The craftsmanship reminded Tom of pictures he'd seen of ancient Roman structures, except this was in the middle of Nebraska, on land that had been in his family for generations. "This doesn't make any sense," Tom said, kneeling at the edge of the crack. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it into the darkness beyond the archway. The beam revealed a tunnel extending downward at a gentle slope. The walls were lined with the same precisely fitted stones as the archway, and the floor was surprisingly smooth, as if worn down by centuries of footsteps. Tom felt a chill run down his spine despite the morning heat. Who had built this and when? As far as he knew, this area had been nothing but farmland and wilderness before European settlers arrived. The local Native American tribes hadn't built stone structures like this, at least not according to any history he'd learned. "Should we take a closer look, Rex?" Tom asked his dog, who responded with a concerned whine. Tom's curiosity won out over caution. He carefully lowered himself into the crack, testing each foothold before putting his weight on it. Rex barked from above, clearly unhappy with his master's decision. "Stay, boy. I'll just take a quick peek and be right back." The air inside the tunnel was cool and surprisingly fresh, not stale or musty as Tom would have expected from an underground space. His flashlight beam revealed more details as he ventured a few yards in. The walls weren't just stone. They had markings on them, symbols carved into the rock that resembled nothing Tom had ever seen before. They weren't letters exactly, more like pictograms with swirls and lines that seemed to flow in patterns across the stone surface. "Good Lord," Tom whispered, running his fingers over the carvings. They were smooth to the touch, the edges of each symbol worn down as if by time itself. Tom continued a bit further, noticing that the tunnel maintained its width and height comfortably. A grown man could walk upright without stooping. The craftsmanship was remarkable. Not a single stone appeared to have shifted despite what must have been centuries underground, and despite the recent earthquake. About 50 yards in, Tom stopped. his common sense finally catching up with his curiosity. He was alone, no one knew where he was, and he was exploring an unknown tunnel that had been hidden until today. If something happened to him, it might be days before anyone found him. That's enough adventure for now, he said to himself, turning back toward the entrance. The patch of daylight seemed smaller now, like a distant star in the vast darkness of the tunnel. When Tom climbed back out into the sunlight, Rex greeted him with enthusiastic jumps and licks, as if his master had returned from a dangerous journey. "You won't believe what's down there, boy," Tom said, patting Rex's head. He pulled out his phone again, this time to make a call. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from excitement. Tom called his wife first. Nancy was visiting her sister in Omaha and had been planning to return home tomorrow. "Nancy, you need to come home today," Tom said when she answered. "Something incredible has happened. Is everything okay? Was that earthquake bad out there?" Nancy's voice was filled with concern. "Everything's fine, but that earthquake opened up something on our land. A tunnel, Nancy. An old stone tunnel that looks like it's been here for hundreds of years." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Tom Wilson, if this is one of your jokes, no joke. I'm staring at it right now. I went in a little ways. It's real and it's not something that should be here. Not in Nebraska, not on our farm." After convincing Nancy to return home that day, Tom made another call to his old friend Bill Jenkins, who taught history at the local community college. "Bill, it's Tom. That earthquake this morning opened up something strange on my land. I think you should see it." 2 hours later, Tom's quiet farm had become the site of nervous excitement. Nancy had made it home in record time, and Bill had arrived with one of his colleagues, Dr. Linda Carter, an archaeologist who occasionally gave guest lectures at the college. The four of them stood at the edge of the crack, staring down at the stone archway. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Carter said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This shouldn't be here." "That's what I said," Tom replied. "The stonework looks similar to some pre-Columbian sites I've studied," Dr. Carter continued. "But nothing like this has ever been documented in this region." Bill knelt down and examined the archway more closely. "The craftsmanship is remarkable. These stones have been fitted together with incredible precision." "I went in about 50 yards, Tom said. "There are strange symbols carved into the walls." Dr. Carter's eyes widened. "We need to document this properly before going further. This could be a major archaeological discovery." As the sun began to set, Tom found himself sitting on his porch again, trying to process the day's events. His quiet farm had suddenly become the center of something much bigger than himself. Dr. Carter had made some calls, and tomorrow a team from the state university would arrive to begin a proper investigation. Nancy sat beside him, her hand on his knee. "How long do you think it's been there? Under our feet all this time?" Tom shook his head. "I can't even guess. Hundreds of years, maybe more. All the time my family has owned this land. All the times I walked that field, plowed it, planted it, and I never knew what was beneath me." "It's like finding out your home has been keeping a secret from you," Nancy said. Tom nodded, watching as the last light of day faded over his cornfields. Tomorrow their quiet life would change. People would come, scientists, historians, maybe even media. Their farm would never be quite the same again. But tonight, in the growing darkness, Tom couldn't help but wonder about who had built that tunnel, what purpose it had served, and what might be waiting deeper inside, beyond where he had ventured. For the first time in decades, Tom felt like a boy again, filled with wonder and the thrill of discovery. Whatever lay in the darkness beneath his farm, Tom knew one thing for certain: his life and possibly the understanding of history itself was about to change forever. Tom barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the stone archway and the tunnel stretching into darkness. By dawn, he had given up on sleep entirely and sat at the kitchen table, nursing his third cup of coffee as Nancy made breakfast. "You look terrible," she said, setting a plate of eggs and toast in front of him. "Thanks," Tom replied with a tired smile. "I kept thinking about what's down there. All these years walking over that spot never knowing." Nancy squeezed his shoulder. "Well, today we start finding out." By 8 in the morning, Tom's quiet farmyard had transformed into a bustling base of operations. 3 vans from the state university had arrived, bringing a team of archaeologists, historians, and equipment. Dr. Carter was back, now dressed in field clothes and directing the setup of various instruments around the crack in the earth. "Mr. Wilson," she called, when she spotted Tom approaching. "We're setting up lighting and safety equipment before we begin the proper exploration. Would you like to join us? It's your land, after all." Tom nodded eagerly. "Just try and keep me away." One of Dr. Carter's colleagues, a tall man with a gray beard, introduced himself as Dr. Pete Reynolds, a specialist in ancient civilizations. "This discovery could be significant," Dr. Reynolds told Tom, as they watched the team secure ropes and lights around the entrance. "The craftsmanship you described doesn't match anything we know about in this region's history. Who do you think built it?" Tom asked. Dr. Reynolds shook his head. "That's what we're here to find out." By mid-morning, the team had set up powerful lights along the first 50 yards of the tunnel that Tom had explored the day before. Everyone wore hard hats with mounted lights, and safety protocols had been established. Tom stood at the entrance with Nancy, Dr. Carter, and Dr. Reynolds, ready for the first official exploration. "Stay close to me," Dr. Carter told Tom and Nancy, "and don't touch anything without asking first." The group descended into the tunnel, the powerful lights illuminating the stonework in a way Tom's flashlight hadn't been able to. In the better light, the symbols on the walls were even more intricate and mysterious. Swirling patterns that sometimes resembled stars, animals or human figures, but in a style unlike any Native American or European art Tom had ever seen. "These symbols appear to be some form of writing or record-keeping," Dr. Reynolds said, photographing the walls, "but they don't match any known ancient script from the Americas." They continued deeper than Tom had ventured the day before. The tunnel maintained its gentle downward slope, and after about 100 yards, they noticed the air getting cooler but still remarkably fresh. "There must be some natural ventilation system," Dr. Carter observed. "Otherwise, the air would be stale after being sealed for so long." After walking for nearly 15 minutes, the tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a chamber that made everyone stop in their tracks. The space was roughly circular, about 30 feet in diameter, with a high domed ceiling. The walls were completely covered in the same mysterious symbols, but here they were more organized, appearing in distinct panels like pages in a book. "My God," Dr. Reynolds whispered, his voice echoing in the chamber. In the center of the room stood a stone table or altar, about waist high and perfectly round. Its surface was etched with what looked like a map, lines and shapes that, upon closer inspection, resembled the local river systems and landscape. "Is that our region?" Tom asked, pointing at the map but careful not to touch it. Dr. Carter leaned closer, studying the etching. "I believe it is. See this curve here? That matches the bend in the Missouri River, and these lines could represent smaller tributaries." Nancy, who had been quiet until now, pointed to a small mark on the map. "That's approximately where our farm is, isn't it?" Dr. Reynolds consulted a modern map on his tablet, comparing it with the stone etching. "She's right. If this is indeed a map of this region, then this mark is almost exactly where we're standing right now." The realization sent a chill through the group. Whoever had built this place had marked this specific location hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago. They knew this place was important, Tom said quietly. "But why?" As they circled the stone table, they noticed that 5 tunnels led out from the chamber in different directions, like spokes from a wheel. "We need to mark these and explore systematically," Dr. Carter said, placing numbered markers at each tunnel entrance. "Let's call the one we came through Tunnel 1, and then number the rest clockwise." The team decided to explore Tunnel 2 first. Unlike the entrance tunnel, this passage was level rather than sloping downward. The symbols on the walls here were different as well, less like writing and more like images depicting people engaged in various activities. "These look like scenes of daily life," Dr. Reynolds said, examining one panel that showed figures working in what appeared to be fields. Agriculture, perhaps. They continued down Tunnel 2 for about 50 yards before it opened into a smaller chamber. This room took their breath away even more than the first. Along the walls stood shelves carved directly from the stone, and on these shelves were artifacts, dozens of them, perfectly preserved in the cool, dry air. "Incredible," Dr. Carter whispered, approaching the nearest shelf. The objects appeared to be tools and household items, stone and bone implements, clay pots decorated with the same swirling symbols from the tunnel walls, woven baskets still intact after centuries, and even what looked like musical instruments, flutes carved from bone and small drums with animal hide coverings. "These," Artifacts could revolutionize our understanding of pre-Columbian cultures in this region, Dr. Reynolds said, carefully photographing each item without touching them. The preservation is remarkable. Nancy pointed to one shelf that held what appeared to be jewelry. Necklaces made from polished stones, shells, and what looked like copper. "These are beautiful," she said. Whoever made these was highly skilled. Tom was drawn to a particular object on a lower shelf, a small stone carving of a man holding what appeared to be a farming tool, perhaps a hoe or digging stick. Something about it resonated with him, this ancient farmer frozen in stone, found beneath the fields where Tom had spent his life farming. As the group documented the chamber's contents, one of the younger archaeologists called them over to a corner where she had discovered something unusual, a sealed clay container about the size of a shoebox. "Should we open it?" she asked Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter hesitated. "Normally, I'd say we should take it back to the lab first, but given the unique circumstances..." She glanced at Tom. "It's your land, Mr. Wilson. What do you think?" Tom felt the weight of the moment. "I think we've waited long enough to find out what's down here. Let's open it." With careful hands, Dr. Carter removed the fitted clay lid. Inside, perfectly preserved, was a stack of what appeared to be thin sheets of some material. Not quite paper, not quite fabric, covered in more of the mysterious symbols. "Some kind of manuscript," Dr. Reynolds breathed. This could be the key to understanding who these people were. By late afternoon, the team had photographed and cataloged every item in the second chamber, but had barely scratched the surface of the site's mysteries. They returned to the central chamber to plan the exploration of the remaining tunnels. As they discussed next steps, Tom noticed something they had overlooked earlier, a small indentation in the floor near the stone table. "About the size of a dinner plate, what's this?" he asked, kneeling down to look closer. Dr. Carter joined him. "It looks deliberate. Maybe some kind of marker or..." As Tom's hand passed over the indentation, a soft click echoed through the chamber, and a section of the floor near the stone table began to lower, revealing a hidden compartment. Everyone stepped back in surprise. Inside the compartment was a single object, a smooth stone sphere about the size of a baseball, its surface covered with the now familiar symbols, but also inlaid with thin lines of what appeared to be metal. "Be very careful with that," Dr. Reynolds warned as Dr. Carter prepared to document it. "It appears to be some kind of important artifact, possibly ceremonial." Tom couldn't take his eyes off the sphere. There was something about it that seemed almost alive, as if it held secrets just waiting to be discovered. "I think we've found enough for one day," Dr. Carter finally said, checking her watch. "It's getting late, and we need to process what we've documented so far before continuing." As the group made their way back to the surface, Tom's mind was racing. His simple farm had suddenly become the center of what might be one of the most important archaeological discoveries in American history. The land that had provided for his family for generations now held a different kind of value, as a window into a past no one had known existed. Standing in the fading daylight, watching the archaeological team set up floodlights around the entrance for the night guard shift, Tom felt a strange connection to whoever had built these tunnels centuries ago. They too had worked this land, had found something special about this particular spot on Earth. "What are you thinking?" Nancy asked, slipping her hand into his. "I'm thinking about time," Tom replied, "about how many lives have been lived on this spot, how many secrets the Earth keeps, and I'm wondering what tomorrow will bring when we explore those other tunnels." As the sun set over the cornfields, casting long shadows across the farm, Tom knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The quiet life he had known was now part of a much bigger story, one that stretched back through time and might soon captivate the entire nation. Word spread fast in small towns. By the next morning, a small crowd of curious neighbors and local reporters had gathered at the end of Tom's driveway. A police car was parked across the entrance, the local sheriff keeping onlookers at a distance. "Never thought I'd see the day when I needed police protection on my own property," Tom said to Nancy as they watched from the kitchen window. "Better get used to it," Nancy replied, pouring him coffee. "Once the bigger news stations pick this up, it's going to get a lot more crowded." She was right. By mid-morning, a news van from the nearest city had arrived, and a reporter was doing a live broadcast from the road. Tom could see her gesturing toward his fields, where the archaeological team had set up a larger operation overnight. including a white tent covering the entrance to the tunnel. Dr. Carter met Tom on his porch looking tired but excited. "We've been analyzing the findings all night. The artifacts from the second chamber appear to be around 1,000 years old, give or take a century." 1,000 years, Tom repeated, trying to wrap his mind around it. "That would be around 1000 AD, yes," Dr. Carter nodded. "Long before European contact in this region." But here's the strange part. The craftsmanship of the tunnels themselves, and some of the artifacts don't match anything we know about indigenous cultures from this time period in this area. Tom leaned against the porch railing. "So who built it?" "That's the million-dollar question," Dr. Carter said. "And those symbols, we've been comparing them to known writing systems from around the world. They don't match anything in our databases." The exploration continued that day with an expanded team. Tom insisted on joining them again, and this time they planned to explore Tunnel 3 from the central chamber. As they descended into the earth once more, Tom noticed new equipment had been installed: air quality monitors, more powerful lights, and a communication system connecting the underground team to those on the surface. The central chamber with its stone table looked different today, more like a research lab with tablets, cameras, and measuring tools scattered around. The mysterious stone sphere they had discovered yesterday now sat in a protective case, waiting to be transported to the university for further study. "This way," Dr. Carter said, leading them toward Tunnel 3. "We've done an initial scan with ground-penetrating radar. This tunnel extends about 200 feet and appears to end in another chamber, larger than the one we found yesterday." Tunnel 3 was different from the others. The walls here were decorated with scenes that seemed to tell a story. The images showed people looking up at the sky, at what appeared to be unusual celestial events: comets, eclipses, or perhaps something else entirely. "These look like astronomical observations," Dr. Reynolds said, filming the walls as they walked. "See how they've mapped star patterns here? Some of these constellations I recognize, but others?" Tom studied one panel that showed people gathered around a circular structure, pointing to the sky where a bright object was depicted. "What do you think they're doing?" "Some form of celestial worship, perhaps," Dr. Reynolds suggested. Many ancient cultures based their religious practices around astronomical events. They continued deeper into the tunnel, and the images on the walls became more complex, showing the same circular structure, but now with lines connecting it to various stars or planets. After walking for about 10 minutes, the tunnel opened into a chamber that made yesterday's discoveries seem modest by comparison. The room was enormous, at least 60 feet across, with a ceiling so high their lights couldn't fully illuminate it. "Incredible," Dr. Carter whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space. In the center of the chamber stood a structure that matched the images they had seen in the tunnel, a stone circle about 15 feet in diameter, raised slightly from the floor like a platform. It was divided into sections by inlaid lines of some shiny material that looked like metal, but didn't appear to be corroded despite its age. Around the circle's perimeter were stone pillars, each about 7 feet tall, carved with more of the mysterious symbols. The pillars were positioned at specific points around the circle, creating what looked like a giant compass or calendar. "This has to be some kind of observatory," Dr. Reynolds said, approaching one of the pillars. "The positioning is too precise to be random," another archaeologist pointed up. "Look at the ceiling." Their lights revealed that the high ceiling was painted with what appeared to be a map of the night sky. Thousands of stars, constellations, and celestial bodies, all interconnected by painted lines forming complex patterns. "How could they have created this underground?" Nancy asked. "How would they see the stars to map them so accurately?" No one had an answer. The team spent hours documenting the chamber, measuring the positions of the pillars, photographing the ceiling, and studying the central stone circle. The more they explored, the more questions arose. The level of astronomical knowledge displayed was far beyond what was believed possible for North American cultures of 1,000 years ago. "There's something else," one of the younger archaeologists called from the far side of the chamber. Another doorway. Hidden behind one of the stone pillars was a narrow opening leading to a small room. Unlike the grand chamber they had just explored, this space was simple and unadorned, except for a single wall covered in symbols that appeared different from those they had seen elsewhere. "These look more like equations than writing," Dr. Reynolds said, studying the wall. See these repeating patterns? They almost resemble mathematical formulas. Dr. Carter was examining something at the base of the wall, a stone container similar to the one they had found the day before, but larger. Should we open it? She asked, looking to Tom. Tom nodded, his curiosity overwhelming any hesitation. Dr. Carter carefully lifted the lid, revealing several objects inside. The first was another manuscript of the strange material, covered in more dense writing. Beneath it were objects that caused everyone to fall silent, what appeared to be sophisticated metal tools, including something that resembled a compass, but far more complex than any compass from that time period should have been. But most surprising was a small model, about a foot across, that appeared to be a replica of the solar system, a central golden sphere representing the sun, with smaller spheres attached by metal arms representing the planets, including Earth with its moon. "This is impossible," Dr. Reynolds whispered. The heliocentric model of the solar system wasn't widely accepted until the 16th century, after Copernicus. This artifact is supposedly from 1000 AD. And look, Dr. Carter pointed, 8 planets correctly positioned relative to each other. Neptune wasn't discovered until 1846. The implications hung in the air, unspoken but felt by everyone. Either their dating was wrong, or this civilization had knowledge it shouldn't have possessed. As they carefully documented the contents of the container, one of the technicians who had been scanning the walls with specialized equipment called them over. "You need to see this," she said, pointing to her tablet. "The scan shows something behind this section of wall. A hidden chamber." Dr. Carter examined the data. "She's right. There's a space about 10 feet square behind this wall, but I don't see any entrance or mechanism to open it." Tom had been quiet for some time, taking in the overwhelming discoveries. Now he looked at the wall carefully, noticing a slight difference in the pattern of stones near the floor. "What about here?" he said, pointing to an area where one stone protruded slightly more than the others. "This looks like it could be pressed in, like the mechanism we found yesterday." Dr. Carter examined it, then nodded. "It's worth a try." Everyone stepped back just in case. Tom pressed the stone, and for a moment nothing happened. Then, with a low grinding sound, a section of the wall began to move, rotating slowly to reveal a darkened space beyond. Their lights illuminated a small room, empty, except for a single pedestal in the center. On the pedestal sat an object that defied explanation. A perfectly smooth cube, about 6 inches on each side, made of a material that appeared metallic but unlike any metal they recognized. Its surface reflected their lights with an almost mirror-like quality, and each face was etched with different symbols, more complex than those they had seen elsewhere. "What is it?" Nancy whispered. No one answered. They all stood in silence, staring at the cube that seemed so out of place, so beyond the technological capabilities of any civilization from 1,000 years ago. Dr. Reynolds finally spoke. "We need to bring in more specialists. Physicists, metallurgists, linguists. This is beyond archaeology now." By the time they emerged from the tunnel, the sun was setting, and the scene at the farm had changed dramatically. More news vans had arrived along with government vehicles. Men and women in suits were talking to the archaeological team leaders, and a temporary fence had been erected around the site. "Mr. Wilson?" A woman in a dark suit approached Tom. "I'm Dr. Helen Reed from the National Science Foundation. We've been briefed on your discovery. The government is taking an interest in this site now. It's potentially of national significance." Tom looked out over his farm, now transformed into something unrecognizable with all the activity, lights, and equipment. He felt a strange mix of pride and loss. Pride at being part of such an important discovery, but loss of the simple life he had known. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Dr. Reed said, "we bring in the best minds in the country to figure out exactly what you've found beneath your cornfield. Because based on the preliminary reports, this could change our understanding of human history." As night fell over the farm, lights illuminated the research area like a small city had sprung up overnight. Tom stood on his porch watching the activity, thinking about the mysterious people who had built the tunnels and what they might have been, trying to tell future generations with their strange artifacts and symbols. Whatever secrets lay buried beneath his land, Tom knew they were only beginning to uncover them. And somehow he felt that the cube they had found today was just the beginning of even greater mysteries waiting in the darkness below. By the third day, Tom's farm had become unrecognizable. A small village of research tents surrounded the tunnel entrance. Government vehicles lined the driveway, and a temporary chain-link fence circled the entire site. Armed guards stood at checkpoints checking ID badges as researchers and officials came and went. Tom sat at his kitchen table, watching the activity through the window. The piece of farm life seemed like a distant memory now. "They've offered us a hotel in town," Nancy said, joining him with a fresh pot of coffee. "Said it might be more comfortable with all this commotion." Tom shook his head. "This is our home. I'm not leaving just because it got crowded." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Reed from the National Science Foundation stood on their porch, looking tired but excited. "Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Wilson," she greeted them. "I wanted to update you personally." The teams worked through the night analyzing the artifacts. "What we're finding is, well, frankly, it's astonishing." They invited her in, and she spread several photographs on the kitchen table. "The metal alloy in the tools we found isn't like anything we've seen in artifacts from this time period. It contains elements that shouldn't have been possible to refine with technology available 1,000 years ago." She pointed to another photo, showing the mysterious cube they had discovered. "This object is particularly puzzling. It's not made of any metal we recognize. Initial tests suggest it might be a compound that we've only recently learned to synthesize in modern laboratories." Tom frowned. "What are you saying exactly?" Dr. Reed hesitated. "I'm saying that either our dating methods are wrong, or the people who built these tunnels possessed knowledge and technology far beyond what we thought possible for that time period." "Could it be more recent?" Nancy asked. "Maybe just a few hundred years old instead of 1,000? Dr. Reed shook her head. "Multiple dating methods all point to the same time frame, approximately 1,000 years ago. And there's more." She pulled out another photo showing the manuscript they had found. "Our linguistics team has been working non-stop on these symbols. They don't match any known ancient writing system, but they do appear to follow consistent patterns that suggest a developed language." Tom looked at the strange, swirling symbols, feeling a connection to them he couldn't explain. "Have they translated any of it?" he asked. "Not yet, but they've found something interesting. Some of the symbols appear to match ancient astronomical notations for stars and planets, but with much greater precision than other ancient cultures achieved. And others," she hesitated again. "Some appear to be mathematical formulas that describe physics concepts we only discovered in the last few centuries." The implications hung in the air. Tom struggled to process what she was suggesting. "Mr. Wilson," Dr. Reed continued, "the government is bringing in more specialists today, including experts from NASA and the Department of Energy. This discovery has national security implications now. I need to ask for your continued cooperation and discretion." Tom nodded slowly. "It's my land. I want to know everything you find." "Of course," Dr. Reed assured him. "You'll be kept informed. In fact, we'd like you to join the exploration of the fourth tunnel today. Your observations have been valuable, and this is still your property." After Dr. Reed left, Tom and Nancy sat in silence for a while. "What do you think it all means?" Nancy finally asked. Tom shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." Later that morning, Tom joined an expanded research team at the tunnel entrance. The site had been transformed into a sophisticated operation with equipment he didn't recognize. Men and women in various uniforms moved purposefully between tents and the tunnel entrance, which now had a proper reinforced doorway installed. Dr. Carter greeted him warmly. "Tom, glad you could join us. We're preparing to explore Tunnel 4 today." They descended into the now familiar central chamber, which had been equipped with powerful lighting, monitoring stations, and various scientific instruments. Researchers in different colored vests worked at different stations, documenting, measuring, and analyzing every inch of the space. The mysterious cube had been moved to a secure lab on the surface, but the stone table with its etched map remained the centerpiece of the chamber. Tom noticed that someone had placed small markers on the map, corresponding to the locations where the tunnels led. "We've been mapping the entire complex," Dr. Carter explained, noticing his interest. "The tunnels aren't random. They extend in specific directions that align with cardinal points and possibly celestial markers." Tunnel 4 was narrower than the others, requiring them to walk single file. Unlike the previous tunnels with their elaborate carvings and symbols, This one was plain, its walls smooth and undecorated. "Why is this one different?" Tom asked. "We're not sure," Dr. Carter replied. "But ground-penetrating radar shows it extends deeper than the others before opening into what appears to be another large chamber." They walked for nearly 15 minutes, descending gradually until Tom estimated they must be at least 100 feet underground. The air remained surprisingly fresh, suggesting an elaborate ventilation system throughout the complex. Finally, the tunnel widened, and they found themselves in a chamber unlike any they had seen before. It was perfectly circular, its ceiling domed like the central chamber but higher, disappearing into darkness above. But what caught everyone's attention was the floor. The entire floor appeared to be a vast mosaic, created from thousands of small colored stones. From their vantage point at the entrance, it was difficult to make out the full pattern, but it seemed to depict a map, not of the local area like the stone table, but of something much larger. "Is that the entire continent?" one of the researchers asked in disbelief. Dr. Reynolds nodded slowly. "North and South America, depicted with remarkable accuracy. Look at the coastlines." The team spread out around the edges of the chamber, careful not to step on the mosaic. As they set up powerful lights to illuminate the entire floor, the full scope of the map became clear. It showed not just the Americas, but all the world's continents, rendered with a precision that shouldn't have been possible 1,000 years ago. This level of geographical knowledge wasn't available until the age of global exploration, Dr. Reynolds said. His voice hushed with awe. "Europeans didn't even know North America existed until the late 15th century, let alone have accurate maps of its coastlines." But there was more. Inlaid in the map at specific points were small glowing stones, dozens of them, scattered across the continents in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern. In the dim light, they emitted a faint bluish glow. "What are those?" Tom asked, pointing to the nearest one, located approximately where they were now, in Nebraska. Dr. Carter approached it cautiously, scanning it with a handheld device. "Some kind of mineral that has phosphorescent properties, but the pattern of placement must be significant." One of the new scientists, introduced as Dr. Paul Wong from the Department of Energy, was studying the glowing stones with intense interest. "These aren't random placements," he said after a while. "They correspond to geological features, fault lines, mineral deposits, energy sources. This one," he pointed to the stone marking their location, "sits directly above a previously unknown geothermal pocket. That's why the air in these tunnels stays fresh. They're tapping into natural heat and air circulation from underground thermal activity." The implications were staggering. The builders hadn't just created a map of the world with impossible accuracy. They had marked resources and geological features that modern science had only recently discovered. As the team documented the map, Tom noticed something on the far wall of the chamber, a small alcove containing what appeared to be a stone pedestal similar to the one that had held the mysterious cube in the previous chamber. "Over here," he called to the others. The pedestal was empty, but carved into its surface was an indentation, a perfect square, exactly the size of the cube they had found earlier. "It's a matching set," Dr. Carter said, examining the pedestal. The cube was meant to be placed here. Around the pedestal, the wall was covered in more of the strange symbols, but these were arranged differently, more like instructions than narrative. "I think this is telling us what the cube is for," Dr. Reynolds said, photographing the symbols, maybe how to use it or what it does when placed here. The team debated whether to bring the cube down to test the theory, but Dr. Reed, who had joined them by now, was cautious. "We need to understand more before we start experimenting. The cube is still being analyzed in the lab." As they continued to study the chamber, one of the technicians monitoring air quality suddenly called out an alarm. "Something's changing. The composition of the air is shifting." At the same moment, the glowing stones in the floor map began to pulse, their light growing stronger and then fading in a rhythmic pattern. A low humming sound seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "Everyone out now," Dr. Reed ordered, her voice sharp with authority. "Back to the surface immediately!" The team quickly gathered their equipment and hurried back into the tunnel. Tom looked back once before leaving, watching as the glowing stones continued their mysterious pulsing, like a heartbeat awakening after 1,000 years of sleep. Back on the surface, the site had erupted into controlled chaos. New equipment was being rushed in, and officials in suits were gathered in tense conversation outside the main research tent. "What's happening?" Tom asked Dr. Carter as they emerged from the tunnel. "I don't know exactly," she admitted, "but something in that chamber activated when we were down there." The energy reading spiked off the charts. Dr. Reed approached them, her expression serious. "Mr. Wilson, I need to ask you something important. Has anything unusual happened on your farm over the years? Any unexplained phenomena, equipment failures, strange lights?" Tom thought for a moment, then remembered something he had nearly forgotten. There was one thing about 15 years ago. A section of corn in the west field, right above where we now know the central chamber is, grew nearly twice as tall as the surrounding crops. Just for one season. We thought it was just a quirk in the soil composition. Dr. Reed exchanged glances with her colleagues. The system might have activated before partially. It seems to be responding to our presence now, perhaps to our examinations or to the removal of the cube. The sun was setting as Tom walked back to his house, his mind reeling from the day's discoveries. News vans lined the road beyond the perimeter fence, their satellite dishes raised like curious periscopes. He could see reporters doing live broadcasts, gesturing toward his property. Inside, he found Nancy watching the news. His farm was now the lead story on every channel. "They're calling it the discovery of the century," she said, turning up the volume slightly. Tom watched as experts speculated about the origins of the tunnels, offering theories ranging from an unknown advanced pre-Columbian civilization to more fringe ideas about ancient visitors from beyond Earth. "What do you think?" he asked Nancy, sinking into his chair. "I think," she said slowly, "that our lives will never be the same. And I think those people knew something important, something they wanted future generations to find. Why else build all this and then hide it?" Tom nodded, looking out the window at the lights illuminating the research site, bright against the darkening sky. The quiet farm where he had expected to spend the rest of his days working the land was now the center of a mystery that might rewrite human history. And somewhere in those tunnels beneath his fields, secrets 1,000 years old were beginning to awaken. 1 week had passed since the earthquake that changed everything. Tom's farm now resembled a small military base. 2 large white domes had been constructed over the tunnel entrance, housing advanced equipment and laboratories. Helicopters occasionally landed in what used to be the East Cornfield, bringing more officials and scientists. Tom had refused all offers to relocate. This was still his home, even if he barely recognized it anymore. He sat at his kitchen table early in the morning, drinking coffee and reading through a simplified briefing document Dr. Reed had provided. The government had been surprisingly open with him, perhaps recognizing that keeping the landowner informed was the best strategy. The document summarized what they knew so far. The tunnel complex was approximately 1,000 years old, built by an unknown civilization with knowledge and technology that far exceeded what should have been possible for that time period. The artifacts contained materials and displayed concepts that weren't discovered by modern science until centuries later, and most intriguing, the system appeared to be activating in response to their exploration. Nancy entered the kitchen looking tired. Neither of them had slept well since the discovery. "They want us both at the main tent at 9, she said, pouring herself coffee. "Dr. Reed says they've made a breakthrough with the symbols." Tom nodded. "I'll be ready." The main research tent was crowded with experts when they arrived. Large screens displayed images of the mysterious symbols, alongside complex charts and diagrams. Dr. Reed greeted them and led them to seats at the front. "Thank you for coming," she said, addressing the packed tent. "As you know, our linguistics team has been working around the clock to decipher the unknown writing system found throughout the tunnel complex. Dr. Chen will present their findings." A middle-aged man stepped forward, his excitement visible despite his obvious exhaustion. "After analyzing thousands of symbols from all chambers and tunnels, we've established basic patterns that suggest a complete language system. The breakthrough came when we recognized that certain symbols consistently appeared, alongside the astronomical images." He clicked to a new slide, showing star patterns matched with specific symbols. "By correlating these with known celestial bodies, we established a basic vocabulary. From there, we were able to identify verb forms and grammatical structures." Tom leaned forward, fascinated despite the technical presentation. "We now believe we can translate approximately 30% of the text found in the tunnels," Dr. Chen continued. It's not complete, but it's enough to understand the general message. The room fell silent. This was what everyone had been waiting for. The people who built this called themselves the Keepers, Dr. Chen said. According to our translations, they were a group dedicated to preserving knowledge during a time of great change. They described themselves as those who remember what others forgot. He clicked to another slide showing translations of text from the central chamber. They built this complex as a repository of knowledge, a time capsule of sorts, designed to be discovered by future generations when the Earth speaks through movement, which we believe refers to an earthquake. Exactly what happened on your farm, Mr. Wilson. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. The builders had planned for this moment 1,000 years ago. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary, Dr. Chen continued. The text suggests the Keepers were not the original source of this knowledge. They described themselves as inheritors of wisdom from those who came before and those who came from above. Murmurs spread through the tent. Dr. Reed stepped forward again. We're not jumping to any conclusions about what that means, she said firmly. It could be metaphorical, referring to ancestors or deities. What matters is what we can verify scientifically. She nodded to another scientist who took the floor. The cube found in the third chamber has been analyzed extensively. It's made of a metal alloy containing elements not typically found together in nature. More importantly, it appears to be a key of sorts. He showed images of the cube alongside the empty pedestal they had found in the map chamber. We believe it was designed to fit into that pedestal, possibly activating whatever system caused the energy readings we detected. Dr. Reed addressed the room again. After careful consideration, we've decided to conduct a controlled test. We will return the cube to its apparent intended location and observe what happens. Safety protocols will be in place and only essential personnel will be present. Her eyes found Tom. Mr. Wilson, as the property owner, we'd like you to be there. If you're willing, Tom didn't hesitate. I'll be there. 2 hours later, a small group gathered at the tunnel entrance. Tom and Nancy stood with Dr. Reed, Dr. Carter, Dr. Reynolds, and several government officials he didn't recognize. A team of technicians carried specialized equipment, and 2 security personnel carried protective cases. We'll proceed to the map chamber, Dr. Reed explained. The cube will be placed on the pedestal under controlled conditions. If any unusual readings are detected, we evacuate immediately. The journey through the tunnels felt different today. The temporary lighting had been replaced with permanent fixtures, and communication equipment had been installed at regular intervals. The central chamber, once mysterious and ancient, now looked like a research station with monitoring equipment covering much of the stone table. They continued to the map chamber, where the glowing stones in the floor mosaic pulsed faintly, as they had been doing since the activation a few days earlier. The pedestal waited, its square indentation empty and expectant. One of the technicians set up additional sensors around the pedestal, while another opened a protective case, revealing the mysterious cube. In the chamber's lighting, its metallic surface seemed to shift and change, reflecting colors that weren't present in the room. All recording devices active, a technician announced. Baseline readings established. Dr. Reed looked at each person present, her expression serious. Last chance to leave before we proceed. No one moved. Very well. Please place the cube on the pedestal. Using special handling equipment, a technician carefully lifted the cube and positioned it above the indentation in the pedestal. Slowly, he lowered it into place. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, the cube settled perfectly into the indentation. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The glowing stones in the floor map suddenly blazed with light, illuminating the entire chamber. The humming sound they had heard before returned, louder now, reverberating through the walls. Energy readings are spiking, a technician called out, eyes fixed on his equipment, but no radiation or other harmful emissions detected. The walls of the chamber, previously plain, began to glow faintly, revealing hidden symbols that hadn't been visible before. They covered every surface, glowing with the same bluish light as the stones in the floor. It's activating the entire complex, Dr. Carter said in awe. The symbols are appearing in all the tunnels now, according to the surface team. As they watched, the cube itself began to transform. Its surface shifted and rearranged, sections rotating and sliding until its appearance changed completely. Now it projected a holographic display above itself, a three-dimensional map of stars and planets rotating slowly in the air. "That's impossible," someone whispered. "That's technology we barely have today." Dr. Chen, who had been studying the newly revealed symbols, suddenly spoke urgently. "I can read some of this. It's a message. A warning." All eyes turned to him. "It says the cycle returns. The stars align as before. What was hidden will be revealed. What was dormant will awaken." As if responding to his words, the holographic display changed, zooming in on their solar system, then focusing on Earth. It showed the planet's position relative to certain stars, then overlaid lines connecting specific points on the Earth's surface, points that corresponded exactly with the glowing stones in the floor map. "It's showing a network," Dr. Reynolds said. "These sites are connected somehow. Look at the dates." Dr. Wong pointed to symbols at the edge of the hologram. "If I'm reading this correctly, it's showing a timeline. These stellar alignments happen in cycles of approximately 1,000 years. The last one was when this complex was built. The next one," he paused, calculating. "The next one is happening now within this decade." The implications silenced everyone. Whatever purpose this complex served, whatever the keepers had built it for, it was designed for this specific moment in time, when they knew it would be discovered. Suddenly, the cube emitted a pulse of energy that rippled through the room. The hologram expanded, showing images of massive geological changes, rising seas, shifting land masses, changes in Earth's magnetic field. "It's showing climate and geological predictions," Dr. Wong said, his voice strained. "And they match our current models almost exactly. Somehow they knew what would be happening to our planet now." The final image appeared above the cube, a detailed blueprint of some kind of structure or device, with the cube itself at its center. "I think," Dr. Reed said slowly, "this is instructions. They left us knowledge to help us through whatever changes they knew were coming." As the hologram faded, the cube returned to its original form, still glowing faintly. The stones in the floor map remained illuminated, but dimmer now, pulsing slowly like heartbeats. "We need to identify all these locations on the map," Dr. Reed said, her voice filled with newfound urgency. "If there are more sites like this one, we need to find them before it's too late." The days that followed passed in a blur for Tom. His farm became the headquarters for what the government now called the Keeper Initiative, a global effort to locate the other sites marked on the ancient map and uncover their secrets before the celestial alignment was complete. News of the discovery had spread worldwide. Tom's face appeared on magazine covers and television programs. People gathered at the perimeter fence daily, hoping for a glimpse of the operation or the farmer who had stumbled upon history's greatest mystery. 1 month after the initial discovery, Tom stood on his porch at sunset, watching as researchers came and went from the research domes. Nancy joined him, handing him a mug of coffee. "They've found 3 more sites," she told him. "One in Egypt, one in Peru, and one in China. All exactly where the map showed them. They all have tunnels, and they all activated when our cube was placed on the pedestal." Tom nodded. He'd been kept informed of the discoveries, but the scope of it all still felt overwhelming. "Dr. Reed says they've translated more of the texts," Nancy continued. "The Keepers weren't trying to warn us about a disaster. They were preparing humanity for the next stage of development. The knowledge they preserved, it's about evolution, about human potential. They believed that at certain points in time when the stars align in specific patterns, the opportunity for advancement becomes possible." Tom looked out over his cornfields, now partially overtaken by the research facility. His simple life as a farmer seemed distant now, like a memory from someone else's life. "You know what's strange?" he said. "I don't regret it. Finding the tunnel, all of this." He gestured at the transformed landscape. "It feels like I was supposed to be here. Like my family kept this farm all these generations for this moment." Nancy squeezed his hand. "Maybe we were. Maybe the earthquake happened right when it did. Right where it did for a reason." As darkness fell, the glowing stones beneath the earth cast a faint blue light that seemed to pulse up through the soil in places, visible only if you knew what to look for. All around the world, other sites were awakening, other pieces of an ancient puzzle coming together. Whatever message the Keepers had left for humanity, whatever knowledge they had preserved through the centuries, it was meant for this moment in time. And it had begun with a simple farmer, walking his fields after an earthquake, who had the courage to look into the darkness and discover what lay hidden beneath.